Carol, you got the credentials.
And I've got something to tell you guys after we're done and getting off of the broadcast. I have something I want to send all of you now that I have your emails, but we'll talk about that when we're done.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody and then unmute myself and introduce Dr. Heller on the Major Arcana number 8, Strength.
Now we extend ourselves between Gevurah and Hesed, and the second cross path. And the second cross path, as one might expect, because of the much more spiritualized quality that we have here, is much more benign than the first one. And it is the so-called 19th path between Hesed and Gevurah, and to it attributed is the 8th Arcanum called Strength. The letter is Teth, the meaning of which is a serpent, and the astrological attribution is Leo. So what we have here is the middle barrier in the middle of the tree, where we are combining once again the opposites, but these are much higher opposites, they are much more spiritual opposites, and the result of that is that we require in our nature, and we also manifest an interior, a psychic, a spiritual strength. And the card is a rather beautiful one in the weight deck. It shows a white-clad woman with the sign of eternity over her head, somewhat like the magician higher up, and she is holding the head of a lion. And perceptions differ as to whether she is closing the mouth of the lion or whether she is opening the mouth of the lion. The lion, in typical alchemical fashion, in this case, is red. And so what we have here is, of course, that the strength of the psychic energy, the strength of the psyche rises, but in this case we have a higher spiritual consciousness and force that tames it, that handles it. And depending on whether we are traveling down on the tree of life, in which case she probably opens up the mouth of the lion, but when we are traveling back up, she may close his mouth so that he is not going to roar or bite excessively. In all cases, the spiritual, the eternal, is now in charge of the strength, or in charge of the red lion. And that's a very good and very fortunate kind of a development. So the reason the lion and the serpent are mentioned here is because, according to some Hermetic Kabbalistic scholars, you are dealing here in part also with the kind of force that in the East is called Kundalini. And alchemically, when the serpent changes into the lion, that is when the higher aspect of that force is manifest.
You're muted, Allison.
Thanks, Jeriel, and thanks, Brian. So one of the interesting things in hearing that from Dr. Heller about the Kundalini force, about the serpent, which is Teth turning into the lion, and then the spiritual control over that, it's very interesting because Leo also has that kind of sexuality attribution. The lion has the sexuality attribution. So it's kind of both an external as well as an internal meaning. The roses around the waist and around the head are the roses of passion, and yet the white of the virtue and of Keter, and the infinity over the head, the lemniscate over the head. So lots of things. Plus in the background then that that mountain, which could be the sexualized mountain like we talked about last time, or just the mountain of attainment, that is a direction to be headed and further things to be reached. So a beautiful card. I'm a Leo. I love that card, of course, because, you know, Leos love lions and Leos love themselves. So what are you going to do? And as we look at this for divination, if this were the or this was our summary card in a reading, then I would definitely say that this is something where you are feeling really your own energy and your own ownership of the energy in this situation. You're really able to control it, and this is something where you have quite a bit to offer. It could be that this is an affair, and if it were an affair, for example, it would really feel like this has a great deal of importance and energy to it in terms of how this relationship relates to the person. If this were recommended against, then I would say you might really feel it, but you probably want to avoid engaging with this person, because that if let's say we're in a relationship context, then that energy is going to perhaps compromise you, or make it so that you're over into the situation and over committed and emotionally committed in such a way that it's going to be very difficult to pull yourself out, even though you might have the best of intentions. If that's advised against, then consequences would ensue. In terms of in terms of advice in favor of, then yes, it's time for you to get those energies under control. It's really time for you to not let that stuff just be random and out there, and it's important for you to structure it somehow and get it under control so that it can be directed for your own good. You could have lots of sexual energy and be doing all kinds of things with it and that might be self-destructive, and that would not be this kind of energy. This would be a much healthier, much more self-preserving energy. And I might be bringing moralism into this, and I'm a bit of a prude, unfortunately, so that might be coming into this for me. I don't like it, but I got to admit it. And so those are some of the things that come to mind. Jeriel, can I hand off to you this evening?
Sure. Yeah, I love this card too, but as I've said before, I also love a Leo woman, so, and live with. The card is really just beautiful, and I think that the lion, it's worth saying at the outset that we've talked about before that arrangement of the cards in the sevens with this is the first card of the second row. It's directly below the magician. They both have the sign of eternity over their heads. And so she, I think, represents our higher, once higher consciousness. And she is taming the lion, whether she's opening his mouth or closing his mouth. It stands for the idea of our higher awareness conquering our animal nature. And this is a theme that is very common in humanity's legends. You have Androcles and the lion who pulls the thorn out of the lion's paw, and later he comes into disfavor with the Romans, and they put him in the Colosseum, where they're expecting him to be torn asunder by the lion. And of course, it's the lion that he had helped. And so the lion won't eat him, which really impresses everybody. And the emperor pardons him and the lion both, and they end up walking around in Rome being cheered by people. And that's again the same kind of thing symbolically in that legend of the higher self, the generous, the merciful, overpowering, something that is fierce, and so I think that, and then my observation is going to be very parallel with yours, Allison, um, in that I think that this inner reading looks would indicate that the querent should be looking to their higher self for the solution to whatever is the question that the reading is about, and it also would indicate that whatever kind of really serious problem that you're facing, if you have the courage, you have the strength to deal with it.
Hmm.
And that I think would be the main message. If it's inverted and you use that kind of thing, it would be the opposite, that you're not really in touch with that higher self. You haven't realized, or you don't have the courage to call on those inner resources to deal with your issue or your problem. um, this picture also reminds me of another there are these lion stories as well in the Bible, and in Greek mythology. In Greek mythology, Hercules slays the Nemean lion, and in the Bible you have Daniel in the lion's den, where Daniel has gotten on the wrong side of the kings in the fiery furnace, Ashak, Meshach, and Abednego, and has similar kind of connotations. You also have Samson kills a lion in the Book of Kings, and again, no, it's not in the Book of Kings. It's in the Book of Judges. A lot of people don't realize that Samson's position in society was as a judge
Hmm.
during the era that the judges rather than kings were ruling over Jerusalem, and there was a lion running around, and he was killing people that were going out and into the countryside and so on. And so there's this evil force, and this powerful judge seeks him out and rids the society of that threat. That's kind of similar what's going on with Hercules or Heracles and the Nemean lion in that mythology. That, by the way, is reminds me of our discussion before we convened today, about Alice Bailey and that branch of esotericism. Um, she wrote a book that she credits to herself, not to her ascended master that she worked with, but it goes through the 12 signs of the zodiac and explains them and the energy related to them with the 12 labors of Hercules. And that particular one, each one of them has a spiritual significance, and the sequence of those energies is a lot of the teaching underlying the meditation that is done by groups that are practicing that. And I've talked for a long time, so I got some other interesting stuff, but I'll save that for the discussion. And I'm going to pass it off to you, Christina.
Yeah, Georgia does the full moon meditation a lot of times using the Hercules, the stories. She'll tell the story of the Alice Bailey's interpretation.
And Georgia and I knew each other well a few years back. She used to speak at the full moon meetings that I was a part of, and say hi to her for me
I
when next
will.
time you see
I
her.
did. I did.
Oh,
And
yeah, right.
yeah,
I think I mentioned that before, didn't I?
yeah, she said to say hi. What everything what you guys have said goes along with what I pick up, and also in my card, the lion is red. I mean, really red. Whenever I spread this out, I always pick up the passion is controlled or is aligned as one. So I always pick up that usually.
I can't see.
Well, usually anyway, not always. That if passion controls you, you're a goner. It's when you're aligned with your passion that you're successful, you're able to, there's vitality, there's success. Let's see what else. Yeah, that was the main thing. And that alignment was that this was an encouragement, a card of encouragement that you're on the right path. Keep going, and that now that you've aligned yourself, no one can really hurt you because you've got the lion walking next to you. You've got the lion that you can open and close the mouth, at will. And the eternity sign, or the infinite life. I just noticed that too with the magician. It goes along with the magician. Lana, you want to go next?
Thank you, Christina. Well, I really like this card because, I think in spite of everything, this card is very gentle. And this lion, I think it's a taming of lion, taming of your fears, taming of your ego, taming of your being able to control your animal nature, your animal instincts, your desires. And I think the lion here is very sweet. He's not here to bite you or eat you. I mean, he's it looks like he's licking her hand. So it also reminds me of a lion from Wizard of Oz, and there's some sort of a sweetness, but I associate this card with, I have a really good friend who does animal rescue. And, whenever, I see this card, it reminds me of her. And she often works with animals that are been battered, abused. And, those kittens and little dogs could be, very, aggressive and dangerous. And, she shows them love and acceptance. And she has no fear of their dark side, and she helps them to heal. So that's just, what this card brings for me. But I think there's some interesting things that I've been reading about this card, why it's number 8 in some decks. It was number 11. I don't know if anybody has any comments on that it was switched with justice. So that's kind of interesting. Anyway, I think this is all I have to say. And I will pass this to Magnus.
Thank you, Lana. Much has already been said about this card. I also think it is beautiful, and as we have said, the lion is red, so that's the alchemical phase of rubido, where the material is burning in red. The nigrido has passed, so the creation of the stone or what you are creating is starting to be seen there in the red in some way. But reading wise, I would say, as we had already said, it is inner strange. It is inner, it's come from inside of you, this strange. And you find it if you look for it, and you have it. If it comes up in a reading, there is often an indication that you should solve the problem from inside and use the strength of the inside. And as we have said, with the Lemminskatte symbol over her head, there is a connection to the magician, and it is using that way in a female way, that power that is in the magician. There is also a secret connection to the high priestess, because it is the intuition, the power in the high priestess is manifesting in this card. So here you have the power to act on that force, because in the high priestess you don't have it. And if you are looking at a tree, you can detect that, because this path is crossing the path of the high priestess. So you can find it there. And I also think it's interesting because this is the path of the snake, and we have already talked about the Kundalini forces, and the symbol for that is the snake that is starting in the 7th chakra and rising up in the back, in your back. There is also an esoteric Roman that was written, I think it is a German or Austrian. It's called Initiation, and the author is Elisabeth Heisch, and she writes about incarnations and incarnations from Egypt. And a lot of that book is about this card, actually. And what she is writing is that the lion was an animal in the Egypt kingdom that was controlled by the owner's thought. And as long as you was in harmony with your thought, the lion would be driving your wagon, because they had it before the wagon. And you have a connection here also to the chariot that we discussed last week. And as long as they was in control and harmonization with the thought, the lion would drive the chariot. But if the owner was not in contact with the harmonization and the balance and everything, the lion would eat the owner. So this is also depicted in this card, because here you have a balance. And also all the yellow color here is, of course, a relation to the 6th Sephiroth, the Tiferet Sephiroth, and all the power that is in there. And there is also the blue mountain. It's very, very little blue in this card, which indicates that it's not so much of the Sephira Hesed that is in power in this vibration. And also there is a lot of the Sephira Gebura, the 5th, the Martian energy, because the lion is originally red. So you have actually the ethical triangle building from this card, you can say. It is in here. There is also, if you do the septionary layout, there is also a secret with this card that you will have to find if you are looking at it at the corresponding card, because you will find the balance there, because that septenary layout is about balance, and there is a secret balance in it. And it goes from this card, and it goes from every card, but this card is paired with another card to get the ultimate balance. So if you lie it out and look at it, I think you will find which card it is and what the balance is, because there are 3 cards actually. That I think is what I want to say. There is also a lot of white on the lady, which is of course the Sephira Keter there. That is the divine power there, because you need that for the inner strange. Who is left? Allah is left. So I hand over to Allah.
Thank you, Magnus. I don't really have much to add to all of your descriptions of this card. I also like this card for some reason. It reminds me of my grandmother, the inner strength and the outer strength. The lion is with his tail under, so he's pretty much not only tamed, he's also happy. And I see like nurturing, and I see care and tenderness in this card. That would be my input. Brian.
Hey there. Well, I I rang the bell at the city of Oz, only to be rebuked for showing up with the Tin Man and the Scarecrow, and I very much enjoyed the Oz, because I actually started to think of that before somebody said it. Okay, my comedy routine is done now. I really have enjoyed things that have been said here, and what has been interesting as a sidelight is the different wordings that people have used, that you people, my fellows here, have used to say the same or very similar things, complementary things. I am struck by what it almost seems like a contradiction, that this would be the card of a cross path, whereas it would seem like a vertical from Kether to Malkuth path, but I guess there isn't one, is there? They're interrupted, because a lot of you have spoken about the highest nature connecting to literally the energy, the forces of the bodily nature. And this fits so nicely into the thesis of my hopefully to be written book, which the thesis basically is that all these things, people love to call them spiritual forces. I say not so quick. The force, the energy, all that power comes from literally the body. And these are not spiritual powers, they are spiritual streams of consciousness that seek to feed upon the energy available in our bodies. And so you have all this stuff that wants to live in the manifest world through us, literally through our bodily energy. And so I really connected with the idea that the bodily energy represented by the lion and the other end of the spectrum. I mean, to me, this beautiful lady is literally our divine spark. our ultimate being, which as the fallen angels that we all are, has been cast down into manifestation, and that's where we are conducting ourselves right now. But I also love the mention of the magician as being someone who is administering or connecting a higher consciousness with a more worldly power. But I also appreciated the high priestess connection, because the high priestess, in my view, is privy to the great mysteries, but can only dole out so much of that secret consciousness to the rest of us here in the world. But this card now, the strength card, takes on a new and complementary partnership with those other cards for me now. That this is really the active cooperation, a very effective and beneficial relationship between, I love that, the passions and of the body, the energy of the body that I spoke of a moment ago, and yet our divine spark at the other end. And with that, let us banter.
I wanted to add that also strength is always being tested, so that new strength could replace it, stronger strength. So I just wanted to add that one. And wisdom is what's needed when we're going through these challenges. So I just wanted to add that one.
I would also add that this is somewhat conceptual around the idea of the lion taming. At least I had a crazy job at one point where I was working for the show called Circus of the Stars. And we had to match the star with the circus act. And so we brought the star over to the lion tamer, and that guy was covered with scars. From his head to his toes, he was covered with scars. And that was his, that was part of, I guess, the job of taming a lion, is to be able to engage with that kind of stuff. So there are some differences. I did not realize the attribution in terms of the pathway, and I really like contemplating this card in terms of the balancing or the traveling between Chesed and Gevura. And you definitely see that in this card, where the Chesed is, if not overcoming Jeriel, then balancing and coming into a kind of reconciled agreement with this force, and that certainly matches, and it's right then above on that pathway. It is also kind of that veil. I'm thinking it's near there. And anyway, is the devil pathway, the devil card? I'm curious as to where that is, because that's the next one in the September, in that arrangement of 777 that you were talking about. Maybe that's what you were alluding to, Magnus. But then you have the magician, and then strength, and then the devil. And that kind of seems like from this inception into these lessons of passion, into some serious lessons of passion, where you can really get stuck in the physical and in the ego and in those other trappings of this plane. And so there we see it between 8 and 6, between Hod and Tiferet. Okay. So not exactly, but not that far. I mean, I was just wondering if there was that kind of stacking, but the magician is probably off of that anyway. I'm wanting too much out of the patterns. Anyway, that was some of the notes that I had, and just that idea of traveling back and forth between those two, between the severity and the mercy, and the energies of those two. it seemed like the blue was a little bit lighter on this, but the yellow was certainly there. And maybe that's just the overwhelming glow of Tifereth around that whole pathway, around that whole channel. So that's all for me.
And that path is really right in the middle of the tree, and it connects the two Sephiroth that actually have the closest thing to the names of the pillars that they're situated on as well. And we're going to find everywhere we go that thing of there are these two opposites, and they're brought into harmony by their interaction, and we're constantly seeing that. The two cards that we're seeing tonight, they're part of are you all familiar with the concept of the four cardinal virtues? This goes back to Plato's Republic, and they were temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. Now we have a temperance card, we have a justice card, but the strength card is considered to be the fortitude card in the four cardinal virtues, and the hermit is considered to be the card that represents prudence. And those four cardinal virtues are a very essential part of Freemasonry as well. And there's an article in the first of the two. Remember, I told you in our Research Lodges magazine, Fraternal Review, we have two issues that were on the relationship between Masonry and the Tarot. And there's an article on how that evolved. There were other candidates at one time. What they came up with for Prudence was the Hanged Man card inverted, and this article explains why that idea that held for a while was overturned. And one of the things that I'm going to do after this session is I have links to those two magazines that I edited, and I'm going to send those to you guys as attachments to an email. You can click on them, and you can print it out if you want, or you could just read it. And it's not that it's particularly profound. The design of the magazine is to appeal to Freemasons and to encourage them by what's included in it to study further the things that are done there. And but I think you'll find those interesting, particularly the article about the four virtues. But fortitude, for strength, the idea of fortitude is the ability, when you meet obstacles, to persist and work your way through those articles, and to not be to not be stopped in your mission by the fact that it's hard work and that it may take some time. And and I also wanted to thank you, Alla, for noticing the position of the lion's tail.
Yeah.
Because when animals, particularly aggressive animals, when they tuck their tail between their legs, they have given up that aggressiveness, and a dog with his tail between his legs is not going to bite you. And I think that's what this is showing. This really looks like a person who loves their dog, and the lion instead of a wild beast, is turned into man's best friend. And our passions, if we control them, are our best friend. It brings us to a lot of what we enjoy the most in life. And as others have pointed out tonight, if they have control of you, they're going to constantly get you into trouble. But if you have control of them, they are a pathway to the most fulfilling, the most thrilling things that we as human beings can do in this incarnation.
I would like to jump in here and say I would like to emphasize more towards a symbiotic or cooperational relationship rather than a one or the other being in control. And that's it.
I think that's a good point.
The
And
one-
the esoteric title of this card is The Daughter of the Flaming Sword.
And the card is not the devil, Alison. The card that is balancing is the card that this was changed against.
Okay.
The justice. But there is a reason. If you are looking at the septenary layout, you will see that balance in that card against the other cards. And that is why it was chosen as.
That vertical row is 1 to 8 and 15.
It's not, yes, but it's not the vertical row. That's the interesting thing.
I'm looking for that image of the septenary.
Yes. Or I
And
think
Brian, you have that in that spread. I'm also happy to share it. I don't know what's being shown right now. Yeah, okay.
actually, Yariel, it is one of the virtual row, the one you said, that is balancing, but all the others are not balancing against the justice card. Because the secret is 11, and if you are looking at the upper and the down card in that row where justice is, it will be 22, and if you are division by 2, it will be 11. So you will be in the middle all the time in that way. And if you take a card in a position in that layout, if you take the magician and take the other card in the same position backwards, that will be the world. The sum will be 22, and if you half it, it will be 11. So there is a harmony in that outlaying. That is Paul Foster case. It is in one of his books.
Brian, if you want me to show that septenary thing, I can do that right now if you want me to share a screen. Otherwise, we can keep going with the comments.
Yeah, go ahead and share screen. Are you ready?
Yep. So this is what you were talking about, yes, Magnus?
Yeah. If you are looking at the emperor and the moon, 18 plus 4 is 22, and you half it, you get to the justice, it is 11. And if you are looking at the magician and the world, it is 22, and if you half it, it is 11. And if you are looking at the high priestess and the judgment, the sum will be 22, and if you half it, it's 11. So all those cards in that layout is balancing in the middle card that also is balancing the full layout there.
And then justice is the ultimate balance, who carries the scales and the
Yes. And I believe that is why they changed the 8th and the 11th card, because if you had that, you haven't had that balance in it.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
If anybody wants this PowerPoint, I can put it up in that Google Doc. I'll put up a link to it if you want, or in that.
Yeah, I'd like it. I'd like
Yeah.
to get
I
that.
use it with clients to kind of show them and give them a tour of the images before we do a reading.
Yeah.
And you can kind of speak to I mean, there's multiple things in there. You'll see some of them will be useful. And then I copied the whole thing at the back end and put some of those keywords with the neurolinguistic programming from that Tarot Flip book, just for the heck of it. So I'll put a link to that up in the file.
Thank you.
I can also link those two articles you were talking about, Jeriel, if you want to put that link in the chat here or in the email you were talking about. And I cross-linked Brian to their Dropbox, so we can both things. I'll hopefully. I linked to the Dropbox from the Google. I need to go the other way. Are we good with the Strength card?
Yeah, let's move on to the Hermit.
All right, then. Now we shall take a lonely journey and enjoy it with Dr. Heller on the ninth Arcanum, the Hermit.
Now we are going to move from Tiferet to Hesed, over to the blue ringed sphere. Now, as Gevura, the red sphere on the right side of the tree, from the tree's point of view again, is all strength and energy and power and justice. So the sphere on the other side is quite the opposite. It has to do with benevolence, with opulence, with giving. They are sort of envisioned as the two hands of God. One of them gives and the other one takes away. But this is the blue sphere over there, is definitely the giving side. And so we move there on the 20th path, which connects Tiferet to Hesed, and attributed to it is the ninth Arcanum, the Hermit. The Hermit. The letter Yod, very important letter of the Hebrew alphabet, looks like a little hand, is attributed to it, and the astrological sign is Virgo. So the Hermit walks from that messianic intuition in the center to the position of effective divine love. It is somewhat like the Buddhist concept of the path of the Bodhisattva, sacrifice and love. And these, of course, on a practical, psychological level, bring a certain amount of loneliness. Because in so doing, once again, we must leave a great deal behind. We must leave all attachment behind, and this means loneliness. The more we know what benevolence, what compassion, what transcendental love are really all about, the better we know that we must be more and more alone as we engage in this. It seems like a terrible paradox. The more we love humanity, the more alone we are. And why is that? Because in order to exercise real benevolence, we have to withdraw from the entanglements and from the attachments and from the tentacles of personality. You know, the old Greeks and Romans and so forth in the early times, they distinguished between two kinds of love. One was, like in Latin, one is called amor, and we all know what amor is, how to be amorous and all of that, personal love, and it's grounded in sexuality. as Freud very correctly discovered, and the other is caritas, from whence we get the word charity. And these are different. By way of the exercise of charity, there comes about a certain loneliness because we do not share in the personally related emotions of all the other people. And that is why we have the card of the Hermit, which is a very interesting card, a figure in a long cloak and sort of monkish hood over his head is walking and seems to be walking on a mountaintop. It looks like there's snow under his feet. He's up on high, has a staff in one hand and a light in the other, and sort of following his own light, the light of his own spirit.
Okay, we're going to find out whether my intuition was right, but I meant to ask Magnus to go first on this particular card, and don't ask me why. Try asking me after Magnus gets his. Oops! Now what's happening here? Okay, let me let me.
Yes, you can find the card, Brian. Thank you, Brian.
Would you wait just a minute until I fix up the visual, because I made a mistake a minute ago, and I need to try to repair that mistake. And I am not getting the behavior I expect.
Mm-hmm.
So give me a moment. Sorry, folks.
I can also pull up an image if that will be helpful of the hermit. It won't be as gorgeous as yours, but it might.
I'll edit this later. Just give me a second to line up my ducks.
There it is.
All right, then.
Thank you, Brian. Dr. Heller said a lot about this card, and in a reading, if we are starting with that, it's about it's also about inner strength, but it is finding the inner strength in loneliness, because you have to meditate, you have to think, and you have to be with yourself to find the way. And if you are looking at it color-wise, it's a lot of blue in the card, which of course is a connection to the fourth Sephira, the Hesed and the Jovial, the Jupiterian energies. And that is the high interest for a certain subject, the deviation for a subject that you need to find your way. And also, I think it's interesting, I hadn't realized that before, because the wand is a connection to the Yod, the letter in the Hebraic alphabet, because the Yod is fire and the wand suite is also fire. So there is a connection there. And you also have the lamp with the light in it, and that is, of course, the sixth Sephira, the Tiferet, that is shining. If you are going from the fourth to the sixth, or if you are going the other way with that path. And there is also a lot of white eyes there, so there is a relation to Keter also. And it's a beautiful card. I've always found it beautiful, and it's good to meditate with also. It's beautiful depicted in many of the decks, and it also, the lamp is black, so it's also a connection to Saturnian energies there in the light also. You have to see, as Yeriel has already talked about, the two pillars, you have to see both of them also, not just one of them, and not just the positive things. You have to struggle also to find the knowledge and the understanding. I think that is depicted also in the colors in this card. And I think I'm going back to normal routine and go to Alison.
Thank you, Magnus. This card is a beautiful card, and it's a very compelling card. I noticed that the star is a 6-pointed star, which is similar to Star of David, but also 6 for Tiferet as well is good to note there. When this comes up in a reading, if this came up as the summary card, I would say that we are definitely dealing with one's internal journey and internal process and growth. It probably is indeed a time of loneliness, but not so much a time of abandonment as much as a time where you need to seek your own counsel and understand your own lessons. And as Gerald was saying, seek your own passions. Whatever is your own personal pathway is the draw, is that light that is keeping you. And you are indeed at the top of the mountains, which is isolating from the rest of the world. So a lot of the things are there. If this was in the advice against position, then I would say you may be taking yourself a little bit seriously, and you need to mix up your own perceptions with the input of other people, because right now you're only listening to yourself and you think it's wisdom, and that's not necessarily what's really happening. You might be coming up with some good conclusions, but that pathway is not to your greater benefit. So even though you might be okay with being alone, maybe that's your default mode and you need to seek out other people, or you're intentionally being alone when you have a duty to support other people. Something along those lines might be inferred in that position. In the advice positive position, then, it's time for you to take a little journey and figure out what's true for you, what's going to be the right thing for you, and other people might not understand it. In that way, I see a lot of similarity to the Hanged Man in this position, and that one actually might be the next one down on the septenary. Is it? No. The Hermit goes to the Tower. Interesting. So we go from High Priestess to Hermit to Tower on this, which is interesting because you have the High Priestess as a kind of solitary figure and an independent figure, and then the Hermit is that kind of amplified, but walking out in the world instead of being magnetized to the place where she is. And then the Tower is when all of that gets blown and a new thing has to come through. So that's kind of interesting to contemplate. Anything else in the advice in favor of the Hermit? I think that's just really obvious. And then as Christina, you had brought up some things with the Strength card, just to understand that it is necessary for you to be yourself and to understand that that is enough. Somebody might need to hear that it is enough for them to be on their own, and they do not have to be partnered to be a valid human being. So that's another possible message that could come from the advice card here. If someone's really flipping about their own solitude or loneliness or about a relationship ending, it's okay if it gives way to a period of productivity of your own self. So that's something that comes to mind. Christina, do you want to pick it up?
Yeah, I wanted to add with that is what kept picturing for me when I'm seeing this right now is that hourglass, the theory of the hourglass, where when we start on the path of initiation or whatever studies we get into, we're like the top of the hourglass. We're with all these other people, And then as we get closer and closer to getting to, the work we actually do, we start, the hourglass starts getting thinner and thinner until we're the only one that goes through it. And we're right there. We're right there when we get this card, that we think we're alone, but we're not. That we're entering into another one and now you've gotten through the hourglass, and now you turn it around and you're with everybody else, maybe thinking not the way the other group thought, but it's a new cycle that you've just entered. And a lot of times you'll feel alone when you're entering this new cycle. However, the glass that he's holding, the hermit, it's usually associated with, it's usually associated with your kind of like showing the path to others. You're lighting the way for others to follow, and you're the front guy, right? So it's not always easy. It's not always, it's not, you're kind of alone when you're doing that. However, your intuition is what keeps you going. And I made a note of that. Yeah, you go it alone. That's what, and we all go through this. I don't know, has anyone ever gone through a bar mitzvah or, an initiation of some type, where now you're a man, or now you're a woman? It's sort of like we go through these initiations. So I just wanted to add that. Jeriel, do you want to go next?
Sure. This is the fool who has gone through the experiences represented by the preceding cards 1 through 8. Now he's at the stage of he's the old wise man, and this card also always reminds me of Diogenes, who wanders the world with his lamp, trying to find an honest man. So I think that, and I definitely see this both as a card symbolizing initiation, as was recently mentioned, and also I see this as a card symbolizing meditation. The guru on the mountaintop is something that you see references to frequently, and it's a subject of a lot of humor, where the seeker has climbed the mountain. He's finally reached the mountaintop, and he asks the guru, what's the secret of life, or something profound like that. And the guru usually tells him some sort of a version of, look within yourself to find that. I'm not going to tell you. But I do think that in divination, the significance to me is an advisor or a teacher. And I see the card, and particularly because of the fact that the light in the lamp is the 6-pointed star. That's also called the Star of David. It's also called the Seal of Solomon. And it's 2 triangles, one pointed up, which is supposed to be the triangle of fire, and that represents our consciousness striving upward toward God. And the downward pointing triangle is called the triangle of water, and points downward into the material world. It reminds me a lot as well of the thing with regard to the tree of life, with the flaming sword or lightning strike that goes down the path representing the divine energy going down into human consciousness, and the snake that crosses all of the paths rather than the sephiroths that goes up, which shows man's aspiration toward that divine influence. But I think that it also symbolizes that in one role, we're searching for a teacher. And so when this comes up, divinatory wise, it may say that you should be seeking out the advice of some knowledgeable or empathetic person that can help guide you. And then with regard to the two triangles pointing in other directions, it may be that you are a person who needs guidance to give guidance to someone else. So you have this back and forth kind of relationship of a seeking wisdom from another, or passing on your wisdom to somebody else that needs that. And in terms of it symbolizing meditation, one of the first things that you do in meditation is an alignment, where you start with the physical and you put that out of your mind. You go to your emotions and you lay those aside. You come to your thinking mind and you tell it to shut up and be quiet for a little while, and you move into a higher space where you're in communion with the Almighty rather than with the world in which you're living your life. And you can there get divine wisdom from your own intuition and its connection to our ultimately divine sources. But I think this also says that if you have a problem, you should also consider it may be telling you need a timeout. This isn't a time to rush into any kind of a decision. You should think this over really, really deeply before you commit yourself to make sure that you're going on the right path. And there's a lot of history about the way that this card is depicted over time. There were cards where the lamp is actually being held underneath of the robe that the hermit is wearing, and that says something about that old adage about don't hide your light under a bushel. I wanted to say something else about this card's place in terms of representing the cardinal virtue of prudence. As you'll read in that article that I'm going to send you, that's in one of the magazines I'll send you, the dictionary definition of prudence is the ability to govern and discipline oneself by the use of reason. So this is telling you as well to think things through and do what is prudent. And prudence is, its opposite is rashness, which is going forward without thinking it out all the way. And so this goes back to the point that I had made just a few minutes ago, that if it shows up in a reading, that might be something else that you should be thinking about, that make sure that you have thought it through, and that you're being prudent. You're not just running off and getting in a big hurry. So this also, to me, represents take your time. And so invertedly, this would indicate the admonition against acting rashly. And with that, why don't I pass it off to you, Lana?
Thank you, Jeriel. What I was getting from this card, and I guess it reminds me of a certain period of my life when I really have to disengage from my social circle, as I was getting involved in things like tarot and astrology, and people around me couldn't understand. And so I see this card as a beginning of a spiritual journey. It may be a period of your life where you need to disengage from your mundane activities and go into different dimension, and get clarity of yourself. How do you see it? It's a retrospection and self-analysis. And as a Virgo, and it's also my sun sign, it's a sign of service. So before you can share this light with others, you really have to understand yourself. You have to have a clarity of where are you at before you can guide other people. And I think that's all I want to say. So I will pass this to Alla. Thank you.
Thanks, Lana. Well, I personally love this card, and I also see myself in this card, maybe not the way Lana does, but I've been in service for many years, and I had to be showing the light to many of my clients, and at times it was never felt lonely, but it was like I was there doing this service work, and I had to bring them light. So I see myself in this card, and that's what I'm going to say about it. Christina or Brian, I can't remember who was not sharing yet.
I think it's Brian.
All right then. Just as a little comedic aside, I see another one of those little rounded top conical mountains in the background. And as much as I'd like to suggest that one of our group future missions is to get to the bottom of it, yeah, you know where I'm going. I think we're going to have to try to climb that mountain and try to find out more about the symbology of that steep conical mountain that we see in so many cards. But all right, that's enough for the comedy routine. Certainly, this is a most useful divination card. It just fits so well. It speaks so clearly to what we've been calling the Querent. And I have a little trouble with that term because to ask a question before a reading is not the approach that I most endorse. I feel that a person should be all ears, and in the case of the imagery, all eyes, to what the cards would like to say, to what intuition would like to bring forth. But we'll call it the Querent, and at least I'll continue with that for now. But this so often is that advising the person that they are at the mountaintop. They have a view like few others. They have a perspective which is clean and clear. They have a lamp to shine light on everything that needs to be understood. And while that staff doesn't have leaves growing off of it, I can't help but think it's more than a walking stick. It's really a wand of intuition, and just, you know, deep, broad insight. And the person is clad for the cold weather, is comfortable in that role. And I was almost, somebody else said something that inspired me to think that, yeah, you could almost be accused of being arrogant in your knowledge, but there is a time when you have to say, I do know best. None of the rest of you have quite enough information to be making the judgments that you're making that do not agree with what I see. To me, a real common meaning of this card is I see. Now I see not only my mountaintop perspective and my intuition, but the light that I have brought fills in the details, and the confidence in the expression of the hermit, the peace that the hermit has made with the insight that he has is experiencing. That is the theme that so often plays a part in readings on a practical level, readings for people. And yeah, of course, if it's a cautionary card, don't think you know it all. Don't just take counsel from yourself. And I don't even need to say the opposite of that. The advice is to take count. Oh, I said I wouldn't say it, then I started to. Okay, well, that's really all I have to add, but I accept that this is an extremely fruitful card in a reading. It just, it means so much to people getting a reading, you know, what kind of light it usually sheds upon the whole reading. It's just, of course, I'm going to say, people say, I love this card. I love all of the cards. I love the 10 of Swords. All those swords are so beautifully arranged. And I love them all. Why? Because they're tarot cards, and they are beyond magic. They are definitely gifts from beyond, from above, from almost from that kind of religious stream that seeks to rescue us from the tumult and the obscuration and the confusion, and everything else that happens here on not only on this planet Earth, but on all the unfathomably numerous planets in the universe. This, Tarot definitely is what is it? A facility? No, it's an avenue through which wisdom and help can reach us. And with that, let's banter.
I was just looking at his facial expression, and what was coming to me is I think he's contemplating, should I go down? It seems like he's much more comfortable there on top, and once you disengage from that world and you know your own truth, do you really want to go down? Or the question is, how do I get down? How do I get down? How do I explain all these people what I've learned? And that is a very difficult task.
I would like to thank you, Christina, for the beautiful symbology with the time hourglass there, because it also solved something I have meditated on for a long time. And Yeriel have probably read that also in the Wang book, and that is that Wang is talking about the triangle between the path, the hermit, the emperor, and the Hierophant, and says that you should meditate because there is a lot of knowledge there. And what you was describing with the bar mitzvah and everything, the initiation routine, is actually depicted in that triangle, because you start from an understanding of, or the wisdom of your fate, and you are going into your fate, and the nail there is that is a difficult way to pass. And then you go to the mercy, and then you go to the action with the ritual you described and the beauty, and you get a new window to the world. It's actually showing that triangle. It's beautiful. I haven't seen it before because I have meditated on that triangle for a long time, because that is what Wang is saying, or what Crowley actually said, because I think it was he who said it, that triangle is special.
Yeah, I kind of relate to that, where the hermit, where I've had that experience where you get involved with the esoteric community, and you're by yourself, and you're
Yes.
right in the neck of the hourglass, and then you fall through, and then all of a sudden you got a lot of friends that are involved in esoteric
Yes.
studies.
Yes,
And
yes.
so yeah, the cycles, the new lives,
Yeah, and that's the emperor there also, the power you get in that situation, looking out that window.
And
yeah, go ahead.
Christina?
ahead.
Oh, I just want to add also, he doesn't look old. If you look at his face, he looks young. He looks strong. Even though he's got the white beard and he's standing straight, he doesn't look fragile or anything like that. He looks strong with the wisdom, so he could be 100 years old, and he's that no matter what age we're at, we go through these new lives, these new cycles.
Yeah, there's nothing weak about his posture, and even his bowed head, I think, expresses humility, really. And as for the triangle you were just talking about, Magnus, that's also kind of the shape of the mountain in back there.
Yes.
And I'd like to plug again for you guys this really good book by this fellow Cirot, Cirlot, and his Dictionary of Symbols. And he has
Up my Amazon bill, Jerry.
he has
I have
3 pages on the symbolism of mountains.
Oh,
And near the end of it, he makes this statement. In general, the mountain, the hill, and the mountaintop are all associated with the idea of meditation, spiritual elevation, and the communion of the blessed. And I think that also really is pointing again at initiation. Initiation is often described as going up a mountain, and all of that folklore about the guru who's gone into seclusion and is sitting at the top of the mountain of wisdom. There was one other thing that I had thought about just now, and it's escaping me, but it'll come back, and I'll break in again.
another thing I see now. He is standing on one leg.
Oh.
Sorry, Alison.
no, that's interesting. Some of the things that you had mentioned, Jeriel, I appreciated that kind of sequential moving toward meditation. And one teacher who I really appreciated from Southern California, Andrew de Passano, he talks about contemplation being the objective of meditation, and that contemplation in his description matches that state when you have then left behind the other physical states, and it would correspond, I suppose, to the intuition, but it was about that immediacy of understanding, not a sequential learning. And Stefan, of course, makes that distinction between change and transformation. One thing is a linear process over time, and the other is outside of time and of a different quality. You mentioned the idea of hiding the light and hiding your light under a bushel. That's one of the I Ching changes is about that also, because in times of danger, you have to protect yourself. And certainly those who have professed esoteric things such as we are doing right now, in the past, we could never have done so freely without, being burned at the stake, or someone hearing us and wanting to take our properties and telling on us, or whatever the case may be, the cause of an internal civil war within the religion, within the Christian religion, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously reasons for one to isolate and protect and go to those places of solitude, or caves. Hermits go to caves, indeed, in the mountains as well. I appreciated Brian. Was it Brian? I think that you were talking about 3 sources of light, that you have perspective, that you have intuition, and then you have the lamp. And I thought that was really very instructive. And then this is 9, and that's kind of 3 times 3. There's a lot of within just that articulation of sources of light is very useful to me. And governing by use of reason and prudence is prudence and hiding the light also have some intermingled role there, because of one must protect oneself in this journey in order to complete the journey and not put oneself at risk needlessly, things like that. So those things came to mind. This is this has really deepened my understanding of this card quite a lot. Thank you.
And I now remember the other thing that I was reminded of a while ago, and that is another passage out of the New Testament, when Jesus is about to go into his mission on earth, when he's about 30, 3 times 10, and he goes alone out into the desert to think about what it is, the mission that he's embarking on. And there Satan presents him with the temptations, which is a one that story also I'm always reminded of with the Seven of Cups, where you see the various cups. But again, that's a story that represents the wisdom of before you undertake some great venture, that you isolate yourself for a while and think and contemplate and maybe pray if that's your bent, before you undertake that kind of a passage, which might also be kind of symbolized by the mountains in the background, the long trip that is ahead of you toward some sort of a realization. And what you were describing a minute ago, Allison, the word epiphany came into my mind.
Another flash of light, that kind
Yes.
of, yes, the light outside of time. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's also interesting, the end sum of the card in that triangle there is 9. So the triangle also mirrors the card.
So this and the Prudence thing also is yet another of the look before you leap warning cards, which harkens back to the Fool, who is after all the one who is journeying through this thing. And by the way, I don't know if I put this on my list of books. I think I did. Rachel Pollack's book, 78 Degrees of Wisdom, A Tarot Journey to Self-Awareness. If you want to see a really interesting discussion, she throughout it really has a lot to say about this arrangement of the cards in the septenaries, and the alignments and how those cards influence one another. She has like half a dozen pages on each of the major arcana, and she particularly pays a lot of attention to those septenary relationships, perpendicular and vertical both.
That is on the list. Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to add one more. The balance. Magnus, you pointed out he just has one foot.
Yes.
And his hand is holding the lantern, the light, with his right hand, which is considered the active hand.
Yes.
And then the left hand is holding the wand. The intuition is the receptive hand. And the receptive hand is holding the wand that's balancing him. See the left foot, and then the wand balancing, that's replacing his foot. So I'm wondering the importance of the balancing of the light, the wisdom. It's in this card.
And the path, the symbol for the path is also the hand.
Okay. Yes.
So it's like the path is telling you how you should look at the card, actually, what is important in the card.
And the meaning of the Hebrew word that goes with this is hand.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, the esoteric titles of this card: The Prophet of the Eternal and the Magus of the Voice of Power. And Robert Wang says of this with regard to the 32 paths of wisdom, the 20th path is the intelligence of will and is so called because it is the means of preparation of all and each created being. And by this intelligence, the existence of the primordial wisdom becomes known.
Mm.
So there we are again, going within for deeper wisdom.
Cheryl, I have lately had some issues that have been like very pressing on my mind, and the Hermit card has come up quite a lot, and I have been interpreting it more narrowly, and I really appreciate the perspective that you have brought, and Brian, in terms of wait, hold up, don't rush, consider. All of those things are quite useful in the interpretation as far in rather than the idea of driving towards solitude in a very literal manner. So so thank you for that.
I constantly find throughout the symbolism in both Freemasonry and tarot, the do not hurry. The two things I see repeatedly are seek balance and harmony and don't be in a hurry about it. And it seems ironic, perhaps, but the older I get, the more I realize that one should not get in a hurry. And as we get old, I'm telling you, there's all kinds of motivation toward hurrying up and finish what you haven't completed. But I think that is not the right thing. And the Hermit card is one of the things that tells me that. If you ascribe to reincarnation, which I think is much more plausible than heaven and hell, there's no need to hurry. You're going to get another turn around the wheel.
Well, counter to that a little bit is from Gnostic sources, quoting Jesus, which you will not find in the Bible. He said that you will not be able to do it in the other place. In other words, while you are here, this is an opportunity that you should not squander. That and I think ultimately it is the great resource of power that we are given by being in a body, being in a unit which is so full of energy that all kinds of spiritual, or I should say, non-corporeal streams of consciousness want. They want it for a good reason. It's very valuable. And I think that, this is our opportunity, make the best of it. But in terms of reincarnation, I want to say just two little things that that are kind of in my thesis are a little bit in conflict of how much do we retain as we go along versus how much is fresh and new, how much of a clean slate. I remember somebody saying that they thought that a newborn child was a completely clean slate, and I was like, no, I don't think so. We arrive with a great deal, but to me the very interesting thing is, that spark of light that we are, which is here for the long term, carries a certain amount and sheds and gains, but just to bring into focus, why do I say these things? Because I believe that consciousness is not generated by the brain or by the body, that it is part and parcel of the universe, and that it is eternal, or that at least in the universe, it is indestructible, that consciousness cannot be destroyed. It only goes on and does other things, or goes here, goes there. But the great struggle between our little individual spark of the divine that we are, that carries on through timelessness. We do not perish when our body is dead, and consciousness is indestructible again. So to me, it's a very interesting conundrum, which these studies are indeed shedding a little more light. But
For me, that
I
idea
think
of reincarnation was the spark. It's kind of like it's together with the fractals for me. It's kind of like a very efficient closed system. And so we, I believe, bring our linear thinking to our idea of reincarnation and karma and all of these things. And so we have to recognize that our puny brains have such a limited concept of whatever that mechanism is, so that it shouldn't be like I was a prince and now I'm going to be the pauper or whatever. But having said that, when in my heart of hearts, in 1987 or whatever it was, I had an experience where in my heart of hearts, I kind of said, okay, around this idea of reincarnation, around this idea that makes a whole lot more sense than anything else in the world. And once I kind of went there in my own deeper consciousness, I experienced something that was absolutely transcendent, and then from which I couldn't, if I were to lie about that, it would be the greatest of sins. For me not to have acknowledged that would be the definition of sin to me. So I had a big thing happen just around that concept of that continuity being more likely, and that the system itself is just all the learning that we have to do, which hopefully we retain from life to life, Brian. I don't know, maybe in our unconscious. Obviously, some of that stuff may be there. I don't know. It's not obvious. Anyway, for me, that particular issue was quite moving.
The most persistent misunderstanding of the whole concept of reincarnation is that it is you who is being reincarnated. It's your soul who's being reincarnated, and it's only you in this lifetime. It's going to be something else in the next lifetime, as it was something else in the past lifetime. And all of the theosophical thought is that you should not bother yourself with past life regressions. Those are a sidetrack, and it's your ego wanting to know who you were. That's why everybody was Cleopatra. They were never a slave.
Right. No laundry, right? Exactly.
And I think that that's consistent with one of the most basic concepts in physics, which is energy never goes, it doesn't die. It changes form, but it doesn't go away. The spark of energy that is your soul, that portion of divinity that is generating the energy for your being to have a life and consciousness, that is what reincarnates. And it doesn't need a place like heaven or hell. And that soul has been advanced by whatever we learn in each of those lives. But concern for who we were in those lives is a personality desire. The soul isn't interested in that. And that's, but the people that see it as from an ego point of view, they think, who is Jeriel going to be next time around? There isn't going to be any Jeriel next time around. There is going to be some other person, but that is a passing thing, and the central point is it's the soul, your spark of divinity, that reincarnates.
I'd like to jump
the
in
Gnostic
here.
notion as well, isn't it, Brian?
Well, I'd like to
Is that the
point out
tarot?
that there was a time when there wasn't just body and soul, there was spirit, soul, and body. And in fact, this discussion has brought me a clearer focus, almost tree-based, that almost like our individual, ultimate individual, indestructible unity is in Kether. It's at the top. And the upper portion then from Kether on down a little ways is our spirit. And then as we get down into the middle of the tree, we get into the soul part, and the soul, I think, is very much, that's why I much like the Gnostics said, the psychic, the pneumatic. Well, I got it wrong. Okay, I want to go from the top. The pneumatic at the top, the psychic in the middle, and the pneumatic towards the lower part of the tree. Did I get it wrong again? Anyway, we had this discussion.
Say, Brian, the hyalite at the bottom?
The hyalite at the bottom portion of the tree. The psychic in the midst of the tree, the pneumatic, the upper part of the tree, and to me, the spark, the individual spark they speak of, the Gnostics speak of, that we ultimately, individually possess, is at the very top. And when we engage and when we have successful interaction with the spiritual part, that would be, let's say in the tree, that would be the upper angle. When we deal with the soul, I think we're dealing with really all, I see 6 Sephira, including Yesod. And then the body, the background, the consciousness background of the body is, of course, Malkuth with its the 4 quadrants. But I think that I can just conclude this by saying that I think the older system of spirit, soul, and body are superior to what became, what became more popular later of, soul and body. All right, I'll quit.
And we should take note. I think we have kind of referred to it indirectly. The fact that he's holding that staff should remind us that this card is in the realm of the suit of the higher consciousness as well. It's the wand, and so that's what the traveler carries to steady them as they're walking. And here it's, as you pointed out, Magnus, he's on one foot, so that's the other foot that's holding him upright and erect, and it is, I think, clearly a reference back to the suit of wands.
I think so too. And also the Hebraic letter Yod there for fire also, and the one. There's a lot of power in the card. And I think also what you were saying, Brian, about consciousness there, I am absolutely fascinated about all those tools that this is, the Kabbalah and the tarot and everything, because there you will always discover a new level when you are working with them. You will always go, it's like a fractal actually, because you can go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and you always find something new. Even if the tree is just a tree and it's a picture, and still if you are looking at it, still if you are meditating on it, you find something each time. And I'm also looking at all the colors in the tree with the monochrome scale up, highest up there, and then the primary scale and the secondary scale.
Oh, I never even registered.
Yes, it's very interesting to look at that also, because it also has to do with the olams, the worlds in some way, how they are manifested.
And the ones at the bottom in Malkuth are shades, which is mixture.
Yes. And also, yes, go on, Jerry.
I think our cycles of lives and what we learn during those lives that stays with that permanent spark, that soul thing, is why we have these recognitions of archetypes, because we see them in each one of these lives. They may look a little different to us, but that's why it's a universal kind of thing, that these things, that's what they're connecting up to, is not just the experiences of this life or anything that we've particularly studied, but that the soul has been influenced by the things that these archetypes stand for.
And I also, what you were saying, Brian, the one with the Keter and the Malkuth there, that we are in both, that's the Keter is in Malkuth as Malkuth is in Keter. That's also interesting, that symbology. And I've also meditated on Sandalphon, the archangel that is in Malkuth. It is also said that he is reaching up to Keter.
What's the name of
So he goes, Sandalphon. He goes up to, if you read about him, he has his feet in Keter, and he go in Malkuth, and he goes up to Keter because he has his head in Keter, and there is a lot in that symbology.
Well, color-wise, this card has got just about more Kether than any other card that you could find, and the other color that comes out is the Tippereth color.
Yeah, and also a bit of black there.
Yes,
and the Saturn, and also it's a bit of Shokma, the gray color also is there. So it's like he is showing the eternal triangle up there.
And I like the idea of the connecting the shape of the lamp with the shape of the hourglass. I've got an hourglass sitting right here next to me that looks almost just like that, except in the inside it has two bulbs rather than the light.
Some decks have an hourglass, don't they?
Pardon me?
Some decks have the Hermit holding an hourglass. They must.
I think there is that's happened. Yes, I think so too.
I see something I haven't seen also when I look at the lamp, because it is 3 pillars in the lamp also.
Oh,
so you
are right.
Yes, I saw
it
it now.
I was thinking about that when you were talking about the pillars before. And then the path in the middle, yeah. With the 6-pointed star.
Yes. It's beautiful.
Well, another evening of meaningless banter.
I mean,
I agree with all
I'm
of
sorry,
that
I just
except the
can't.
meaningless part.
Yeah, it has been a most enjoyable session, and don't know what else to say.
Thank you, Brian, as always, for organizing this. Much appreciated. Thank you, everybody, for all your wisdom. I learned so much. I just am always taking notes furiously in this class. It's very gratifying.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Yes,
Good night,
thanks,
Brian.
y'all.
Good night,
Have a
Magnus.
good night, Magnus.
Bye.
See you.